Hello, glorious creative. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of In the Studio with me. Today we're going to be making geodes with resin and alcohol ink. Here are a list of the supplies that you're going to need. There are quite a few supplies, but that's because there are quite a few steps to making something like this. It's important. This is a very boring part, adhering the crystals to the inside edge of the board, but it's an important part because the spacing and the where you adhere the crystals is going to be where they stay. It's going to be, we're eventually going to resin over this glue that we're applying so that the crystals are very stable and aren't going to move. So it's important that you get the spacing down and you get their positioning done right at this point so that you don't have any problems later on when you go to apply your resin over these little crystal parts, which of course I forgot to film, so you won't be seeing that part. That's why I'm telling you about it. So next we're going to move on to, I drew some lines on this board so that I would know where I wanted my ridges to go. And what I did was glue gunned over the lines to make kind of a cavity. And this is going to be where I place my alcohol and I place my stones. But this is also my first very big mistake. So I'm applying the mirrors, the little shattered mirror and the bigger chunks of mirror all along the bottom of my geode, and just flipping the mirrors over because the back of the mirrored pieces is white and it looks funny having a bunch of white pieces. So I'm just flipping them over so that they all kind of look reflective. And I'm applying these are actually shattered marbles. I cooked the marbles on the stove for about 5 minutes, and then I took them off the stove, and once they cooled a little bit, I hit them with a hammer and shattered them into glass pieces. And I did the same thing. These are clear marbles that I did it with. The part down below were just white marbles. I got them at the dollar store, very cheap. So let's move on to mixing the resin. I've mixed it all up, one part A to part B, 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm just adding my alcohol inks to tint the resin. In my head, I thought that this would be a darker color, so I was a little bit bummed that it came out as pastelish as it did, but it's all good. It doesn't matter. It came out fine. This was not part of the problem, believe it or not. This part went fine. So working with resin, if you've never worked with it before, it's so easy. Don't be scared of it. It's very easy. As long as you get your ratios correct and you actually measure it and do it 1-to-1, then you're fine and you won't have any problems. Don't let the torch scare you. If you want to get rid of the air bubbles and the torch scares you, you can always use an embossing gun. I just don't think that you get as good of results as you do with the torch. So don't be scared of it. There's truly nothing to be fearful of. It's very simple. So I'm applying the resin. I'm putting it in one of the little compartments or the little valleys that I created with my glue gun. And this is where things start to go really wrong. I should have taken my glue gun and gone over it a second time to increase the height of each wall that I made with the glue gun. Or I should have taken something like epoxy sculpt and made thin little snakes and created my little compartments out of thin snakes of epoxy sculpt, but I didn't. And I don't know what I was thinking other than I didn't think this would be an issue. I thought that they were tall enough, and they're not, because you can see in the middle a tiny bit of seepage that's going on, not so bad, but my tape is not sticking well to my walls, the outer edges of my board. So I'm having a problem with that. I am managing to get my resin into the little compartments, into the little valleys, which shocked me, but I did make it happen. So that part went well, better than I thought it was going to. But that's about where the good parts end. So I'm going to finish filling these up. As you heard, possibly, my daughter and I made 60 pounds of soap earlier this week. And I have so much soap, I will be the cleanest person in America for the next 20 years, I swear. We have so much soap. So I'm thinking about starting a possible soap shop on Etsy, but I'm not sure whether it's worth it. I'd love to hear what you think. Why don't you stick your opinions down in the comments section? I would love to blow the comments section of this video up. Totally blow it up, because I never get comments on my videos. So I would love to hear what you think, either about the geode or about starting a soap shop. That would be awesome. So I'm just finishing off with the green resin. I'm trying to fill the upper cavity now, which is going well. And you can see that things are okay, basically, with the two that I had already filled up. They look good. The green looks good. I haven't knocked over any of my glass marble pieces, so everything's staying where it should. Things are looking good. I'm just going to keep spreading the resin out, and trying to make sure that it covers all the spots that it needs to cover. It is continuing to push my tape away from my board around the edges, but I'm not too worried about that at this point. I know that it's going to mean that I have to do a lot of sanding work later, but I'm pretty happy with the way things are turning out at this point. But little did I know how quickly that would change. Because here I go to apply the purple resin. And by the way, I used Stream and Wild Berry. Those are the two colors I used for this. So I start pouring the wild berry, and you can see where it's already starting to leak. Yep, that's right. It starts to leak. And it doesn't just leak a little bit. Yeah, things are going very wrong. It does not just leak a little bit. It is starting to leak all over the place very badly. But I just keep going because there's nothing else I can do at this point. All I can do is continue to pour the resin, and here I go over it with the torch to pop the air bubbles. But there really isn't anything else I can do. I have all this resin made. I have my geode formed, so I just have to keep going. So I'm going to take the clear resin. You can see my daughter's fingers trying to push the tape up to the side of the board, and I'm getting more and more concerned as minutes go by. But I just keep adding my clear resin, and looking back, you can see up at the top rocks how the green has really spread into the rocks and pushed that purple down into the green. You can just see where it's becoming a nightmare. And had I been thinking at the time, what I should have done was mixed up some more of the green and just poured it over those clear glass pieces and just done it that way, just kind of gone with the flow. And tried to fix it by just adding some green resin. But I wasn't thinking at that point. I was just more freaking out because nothing was working and everything was getting moved. And look at that upper right corner where the purple and the clear and everything is just a mess. This is not turning out well. So let's look at it. You can see where all of the colors leaked out of my little boundaried areas that I had made, which was not good. That kind of caused a major problem with the entire piece, which really sucked. But there wasn't anything I could do about it at that point. So I just decided to go with it and see what would happen once it cured. But the resin turned out really well. It's pretty. The air bubbles are gone. The alcohol inks mixed flawlessly in with the resin and turned it a beautiful color, even if it wasn't as dark as I wanted it to be. They're still beautiful colors. It's just, you can see where it overflowed into my glass and where it pushed the colors out of their boundaries. You can see my glue gun lines and how far out the colored resin got from its little boundaried areas. So that's another thing I'd love to hear about in the comments is what would you have done to save this piece? Because it's kind of a bummer to spend all of this time and all of the money making something like this and then have it all go so very wrong, because it did. It went very wrong. Now, I have to admit, The final piece did turn out okay. It is kind of pretty. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's not as bad as I had originally thought it was. And my daughter is going to keep it. She convinced me to let her have it rather than throw it away. But it still is not at all what I had envisioned in my mind. But sometimes that's what happens when you start an art project. Sometimes things don't turn out the way you thought that they would, and you just have to go with it and be happy with what you got. And what other choice do you have? So here in just a second, we're going to see what the final piece turned out to be once it cured. Here we go. And you can see it's not terribly bad, but it's definitely not what I had in mind. So that's your takeaway this week, is sometimes things don't turn out the way we plan, but you just got to go with it. Thanks for watching. I'm glad that you tuned in. I will see you in the next video. Stay safe and healthy. Take good care. Bye.